Okay, today we're looking at 4.4, least common multiple. Okay, a multiple of a whole number is the product of the number and any non-zero whole number. So if we're looking at multiples of 4, 4 times 1 is 4. So 4 is a multiple of 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 is a multiple of 4. Multiples generally are larger, whereas factors are smaller. Factors are the small things that multiply that beat a big thing. Multiples are larger things, okay? That's a way to kind of differentiate in your head what a factor is and what a multiple is. Okay, if we look at common multiples, that means we're looking at two or more numbers, and we're going to look at all their multiples, and we're going to find the ones they have in common. Okay, the least common multiple would be taking the multiples that they have in common and finding the smallest of those common multiples. And then the least common denominator is simply the LCM of the denominators. So if you're looking at two fractions, and you're finding the LCD, well, you just look at the denominators and you find the LCM of the two denominators. So that's what least common denominator is. Find the least common multiple of the two numbers. Well, generally we do this the same way. We use upside down division. So I've got 16 and 24, and I find a number that goes into both of those, which is 2. That's 8. That's 12. Again, another number that goes into both of those. That's 2. So I get 4, and I get, excuse me, 6. I keep going. Another number is 2, and I get 2 and 3. Now, once I finish, with GCF, we normally just multiply the side, but with LCM, we make an L, and we multiply the L. Okay? So I can multiply all of these together. I got 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is 16. 16 times 3 is 48. So our LCM of 16 and 24 is 48. Let's look at these two. We've got 20 and 25. Okay. 5 goes into both of those, and that's 4, and that's 5. Okay, these two numbers are relatively prime. Multiply the L. 5 times 5 is 25, times 4 is 100. So the LCM of 20 and 25 is 100. That's the smallest multiple that they both share. Moving on, I've got 6, 8, and 20. I've got 3 numbers now, and these are handled a little differently than we handle factors, or greatest common factor of 3 numbers. Is there a number that goes into all 3? Yes, and that number is 2. So I get 3, I get 4, and I get 10. Now, there is not a number that goes into all 3 of those numbers, but with least common multiple, that doesn't quite matter. What we're going to look for is a number that goes in at least 2 of these. Okay, and I know 4 and 10 share a common factor, and that is 2. So 2 will go into 4 and 10. It doesn't go into 3. I'm leaving 3 alone this time. I'm just going to bring it down. 2 goes into 4 2 times. 2 goes into 10 5 times. Now, none of these numbers have anything in common except for 1. They're all relatively prime. So if I multiply the L, I should have my least common multiple. Now, 5 times 2 is 10. 3 times 4 is 12. 10 times 12 is 120. 120 is the LCM. Here I got 15. 30, and 50. Okay, again, we have 3 numbers, a little different. 5 goes into all these. That's 3, that's 6, and that's 10. Now let's look. 6 and 10 have something in common. 6 and 3 have something in common, but all 3 of these do not. So I'm just going to take the first 2 numbers, 3 and 6, and look at those. 3 goes into both of those, 1 time and 2 times, and I'm just going to bring the 10 down because I did not touch it. Now look again. I've got a 2 and a 10. 2 goes into both of those. The 1 I'm bringing down. 2 goes in that 1 time. 2 goes in that 5 times. Now, if I multiply the side, or the L, not the side, okay, 5 times 5 is 25. 3 times 2 is 6. 25 times 6, that is 150. So I get an LCM of 150. Again, this should be a review for you. I think you did this last year. Okay, now we're going to use the LCD to determine which fraction is greater. So I've got 5/6, and I've got 7/9. And to know which fraction is greater, I have to find a common denominator. Okay? And I can do that by finding the LCM of 6 and 9, and that happens to be 18. Okay? 9 goes in 18 2 times. 2 times 7 is 14. 6 goes in 18 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15. Which one is the larger fraction? Well, it is this one, because 15/18 is certainly larger than 14/18. I know there's some who kind of look at this and get a little messed up because they're used to being told the larger the fraction, the smaller the number, or the larger the number in the denominator, and they get that confused. But if I'm comparing the top numbers, 15 is definitely bigger than 14. When I have the same denominator, I simply compare the top numbers. That tells me which fraction is larger. Okay, 5/8, 13 20ths. Okay, the LCM would be 40. 8 goes into 45 times. 5 times 5 is 25. 20 goes into 40 2 times. 2 times 13 is 26. 26 40ths is certainly bigger than 25 40ths. Here's my answer. 7 12ths. Don't like that. Try this again. 7 12ths and 11 15ths. I think we can go with 60 for the LCM of these two. 12 into 60 goes 5 times. 5 times 7 is 35. 15 into 60 goes 4 times. 4 times 11 is 44. Well, 44 is definitely bigger than 35, so 44 60ths is the larger. I've got 5 16ths, and then I have 3 tenths. Let's see, I think 80 would be the LCM here, because 5 times 16 is 80. 10 goes into 80 8 times. 8 times 3 is 24. 16 goes into it 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25. Definitely 5 16ths is the larger of the two. Moving on. Least common multiple of the monomials. Okay, with monomials, you simply take the two numbers, 15 and 27, and you find the LCM of those two numbers. 3 goes into that, that's 5, and that's 9. I'm done. 9 times 5 is 45. 45 times 3 is 135. Now, I look at the variables, and if there's any variable up here, even if it's not shared by the two, it's going to go in my answer. And I take the largest of the two instead of the smallest like GCF. So I see an x up here. X squared is the largest of the two x's, so x squared goes in my answer. And I'm finished. Okay, again, I want to take 6 and 10 here. Okay, 2 goes into that, 3 and 5. I'm finished. 5 times 3 is 15, times 2 is 30. 30 is the LCM of 6 and 10. I take the largest of what I see up here, and that's going to be y3. And that's my answer. Here I'm looking at 14 and 21. 7 goes into both of those. That's 2 and 3. 6 times 7 is 42. Again, I want to multiply that L to get the LCM. Okay, I take whatever's up here. It doesn't matter if they have it in common or not, as long as it's up here. A, the largest of A is A. I see a B and a B squared. I take the largest, which is B squared. I see a C cubed. That's the only one up there, so it goes to my answer. 42, A, B squared, C cubed. Okay, R3, 5, RST. Now remember, R3 has a coefficient of 1, and the LCM, the smallest multiple of 1 and 5, is 5. Okay, now I take the largest of what I see up there, R3, I see an S, and I see a T, and I'm finished. That is it. Okay, moving on to the next one. Last year, a winter resort had 144,000 visitors, including 45,000 snowboarders. This year, the resort had 160,000 visitors, including 56,000 snowboarders. And which year was the fraction of snowboarders greater? Well, if you're going to make a fraction of snowboarders, you've got to compare the part to the whole. So this first one, I'm comparing 45,000 to the whole, which is 144,000. Then I'm comparing the part, 56,000, to the whole, which is 160,000. Okay, so zeros go away here, makes it a lot easier. Okay, now we're just going to reduce this. I know 45 over 144, you can reduce by 9, because 4 plus 5 is 9, and 4 plus 4 plus 1 is 9. 9 into 5, 45 goes 5 times. 9 into that, well, that's 1, that's 54, that's 16. Okay, over here, 56 and 160. Well, we know 8 goes into that, so 8 goes into 56 7 times, and then 8 goes into 160 20 times. Now, a common denominator would be 80, right? 16 goes into 80, 20 goes into 80. 20 to 80, 4 times 4 times 7 is 28. 16 to 80, 5 times 5 times 5 is 25. Which is the largest? Well, this one, and that was this one. So this year has a larger fraction of snowboarders. And that brings us to the conclusion of today's lesson.